It was an ordinary day when a group of friends stumbled upon an antique shop tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The quaint, cobwebbed storefront whispered tales of forgotten years, inviting them in. Amongst the relics of a bygone era, a peculiar board game caught their eye. It was not the brightly colored pieces or the intricate design that drew them in, but rather an inexplicable allure that tingled their curiosity. Then, the shopkeeper, a man as ancient as the dusty trinkets he sold, issued an ominous warning. He spoke of the game's age, its enigmatic origins, and the heart-stopping adventures it promised. It was not a game for the faint-hearted, he cautioned. Despite the forewarning, or perhaps because of it, the friends, their curiosity piqued, decided to purchase the game. As they left the shop, little did they know, they were bringing home not just a board game, but a gateway to an unimaginable nightmare. As the evening settled in, the friends gathered around the mysterious board game, ready to dive into its enigmatic charm. The game's intricate design, much like a siren's mesmerizing song, beckoned them to a world unbeknownst to them. As they began to play, a subtle shift in the air was felt, as if the room itself was holding its breath in anticipation. The game pieces moved with an eerie certainty, like puppets on a string, and the room began to grow colder, each breath visible in the frosty air. It was as though the game was not just being played, but it was playing them. As the game progressed, the once familiar room began to feel alien, echoing with the quiet whispers of the unseen. Shadows seemed to dance in the corners of their eyes, and the flickering candlelight painted grotesque figures on the walls. The laughter and light banter that had previously filled the room was now replaced with an uneasy silence, broken only by the clatter of the dice on the wooden board. The friends were no longer just playing a game, they were stepping into a realm where their deepest fears lurked, ready to pounce. The game board, with its labyrinthine paths and cryptic symbols, was no longer a plaything. It was a portal, a gateway to their darkest nightmares. Unbeknownst to them, each roll of the dice was leading them closer to the belly of their worst nightmares. One by one, as they took their turns, they found themselves confronting their deepest, darkest fears. The first, a burly young man with a voice like gravel, felt a shiver run down his spine as he cast his gaze upon the board. His eyes widened in horror as he saw spiders, hundreds of them, crawling about. They were everywhere, their small spindly legs moving in an eerie, synchronized dance. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. His skin prickled at the imagined sensation of the eight-legged creatures crawling over him. Next came the second friend, a young woman of strength and resilience, yet her face drained of color as she took her turn. Suddenly, she found herself in the middle of a thunderstorm. The storm was fierce, the thunder roared like an angry beast, and the lightning flashed with a blinding intensity. Rain pelted down on her, each droplet like a tiny arrow piercing her skin. She screamed and she screamed, but it seemed to her as if no one could hear her. The third friend, a young man known for his wit and intelligence, felt a sense of dread wash over him. He found himself trapped in an endless maze. Walls of stone towered over him, their cold, unyielding surfaces closing in. He felt lost, disoriented, his mind a whirl of panic and fear. The labyrinth echoed with his desperate cries, each shout a stark reminder of his plight. The last friend, a young man with a vivid imagination, trembled as he faced his turn. He was confronted by a creature of nightmares, a terrifying beast from his childhood stories. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, its breath filled the air with a foul stench, and its growl sent chills down his spine. He stood frozen in terror, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. In the chilling silence, their screams echoed, their fears amplified, and the game continued. As they grappled with their fears, one of them noticed something peculiar about the game. Amid the chaos and the growing dread, a pattern began to emerge, a glimmer of understanding in the abyss of terror. The mysterious board game, once an innocuous relic, was now a mirror to their deepest, darkest phobias. Yet it wasn't there to merely torment them. It was a challenge, a dare to confront what they feared most. As the realization dawned, their hearts pounded with a newfound resolve. The game wasn't controlling them. It was offering them a path, a way to face their fears, to conquer them. This wasn't a game of chance or luck, but one of courage and determination. They weren't pawns in a sadistic play. They were warriors, ready to face their nightmares head-on. With a deep breath, they decided to turn the tables. They would no longer be victims of their fears. Instead, they would become masters of them. Each took their turn, not with trepidation, but with a fierce courage that seemed to have been born from the very terror that had gripped them. And so, they played on, their moves calculated, their spirits unbroken. Fear was no longer an enemy. It was a gauntlet thrown, a challenge accepted. In the face of terror, they found courage. They weren't just playing the game anymore, they were fighting for their sanity. In the throbbing heart of horror, each friend stood tall, their will ironclad. They dared to stare into the jaws of their deepest fears, to defy the monstrous incarnations that sought to break their spirit. Each confrontation was a dance with dread, a test of metal against the chilling winds of the uncanny. Their courage, once a flickering flame, now roared like a bonfire, casting out the shadows of their terror. One by one, they defeated their fears. The room, once a theater of nightmares, began to blur and shift, peeling away the darkness to reveal the familiar comfort of their living room. The eerie silence was replaced by the gentle hum of their reality, the horrors of the game fading like smoke in the wind. They had faced their worst fears and emerged victorious. They were no longer just friends, they were survivors of a nightmarish game that tested their courage and resolve. They tried to destroy the game, only to find it was indestructible. So instead they hid the game away from any eyes that might happen upon it, burying it as deep as possible with the hopes that the earth would swallow it up. The friends vowed to never speak of it again, and as time went on, they all proved true to their word.